Okay, so I would like to invite Miss Amelia Andersdotter here to give her speech. Is Amelia here? Here she comes. Okay. Put the bag down. And here is Amelia Andersdotter.
Yes.
Andersdotter?
Andersdotter.
Andersdotter.
Yes.
Yes, Andersdotter.
So Swedish.
So, the member of the European Parliament for the Pirate Party. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to see so many people here. Many of you I've met before. And it's a happy occasion for reuniting, I guess. So, I was thinking, why are we here? And why am I here? Well, essentially because I'm a member of the European Parliament on behalf of Piratpartiet, the Swedish Pirate Party. I come originally from Sweden, but various quirks in my path of life have led me to spend a considerable time in different European countries. Wow. Various quirks in my path of life have led me to many different European countries, also probably many of yours. I've spent the last 2 years approximately in Belgium waiting to take up my seat. I've been in Germany sometimes, and probably even in some of your home cities. Last year, I went on an excursion to Romania for 2 months, and this was very educational. I spend most of my time, and I dedicate my work mostly to commercial and industrial policy in the field of telecommunications. Having been in many member states have helped me get a quite good view of the difference in these policies over the scope of the Union, and this is currently being useful to me. Now, earlier this week, someone asked me where I want to see the world in 100 years. I realized only maybe yesterday or the day before that actually my vision of the future probably comes somewhat close to the conjoiners of Alastair Reynolds. Anyone here who is a reader of science fiction will almost certainly have ran across them. There are fictional people whose minds are intertwined by nanobots. They share their knowledge, their culture, and their awareness with each other at a permanent level. When they first started their communities, they were seen as outcasts, artists without any real compassion or emotion, that were luring unwilling victims into their ranks and manipulating people away from their true friends. But as the conjoiners learned to deal with the world around them, they became a part of, and even the driving force of actually space colonization, because Alastair Reynolds writes space opera, so it makes sense to have this leading figure there. The conjoiner community today seems very far away. The European Union has 27 member states. We have 27 different telecommunications policies. We have 27 different industrial rights and property regimes. We've come along, in some respects, we've come a long way with integration. So many people here are almost certainly feeling like they're part of an international community. New communication technologies make it so that a normal teenager who's never had a friend abroad, at this stage of our information and communication technology development is almost certainly hopelessly uncool. More and more people are connected to the internet. A non-negligible amount of people in the European Union have personal computers in their own homes. In some parts of Europe, we even have several personal computers in a private household. Still, this development is not so much in the hands of the people as it is in the hands of large industries. And the fact is still that the majority of the services and the hardware reaching people are made by relatively few industrial actors operating at a European or even global level. While our assets for promoting sciences and knowledges have never been larger and the prospects for social integration never greater, the vast majority of our political energy is spent promoting industry. A symptomatic issue is the recent directive on unauthorized access to computer systems that I think that some of you are probably already aware of. The contents of the proposal are basically appear to come from German legislation. They're proposing to have a system where hacking tools or system security tools would only be available for use by the people who are previously authorized to use them. The issue of regulating unauthorized access this way, of course, isn't technically new. What actually happened was that the Council of Ministers and the Commission made this regulation already back in 2005, and the only reason it's become an issue again is because we're pushing it through the Parliament, since the European Union now needs to be democratic, and that means the European Parliament needs to have a say. But it's stupid, because when you make a hacking tool or a security tool something that can only be used by authorized personnel or authorized researchers, you're also killing some of that creative joy, which is so very important for a research community, and that plays such a large part in our research process. A colleague of mine in the Parliament told me that he felt this regulation was important to be written this way because he didn't want to over-regulate the industry. And of course, he's right. Over-regulating the industry wouldn't be good. I mean, of course, it wouldn't be good if the industry themselves had burdening regulations that made it difficult for them to operate. But in this case, actually, when he's inserting an authorization mechanism, he's not over-regulating the industry. He's badly regulating the public institutions. I'm convinced that with common rules and common frameworks, the cohesion you would get from this in Europe would make sense for us as private persons. But it requires from us, as policymakers and as legislators, that we're not afraid to regulate well. The industry could use more regulation also in other areas of information policy, such as telecommunications networks. I have another friend in the European Parliament who told me in the context of our discussions on the roaming directive that he didn't feel it necessary to keep the price caps. So the European Union currently has price caps, which means that when I come here with my, no longer Belgacom, I'm actually with an alternative operator in Belgium now, but when I come to Czech Republic, they are only allowed to charge me a certain amount of money for me to have access to a Czech telecommunications infrastructure owner network in wireless communications. He didn't feel this price cap was necessary anymore and preferred to have some type of technical regulation that would enable the telecommunications operators to compete better. I replied that I could sympathize with this point of view, insofar as I could be convinced that the national regulatory authorities of the different member states could actually uphold the more technical regulation. My experiences with the member states is that this might well be the case in some of the Eastern European countries, almost certainly in Scandinavia, and in most of Western Europe, actually it'd be hopeless. We don't have the national regulatory capacities at the member state level in Belgium, for instance, to uphold this type of legislation. My friend in this case, of course, also was worried about over-regulating industry. He wanted a more competitive approach where the telecommunications operators could maybe interact with each other on a market basis. But he failed to take into account that in aspiring for this goal, he would be badly regulating public institutions. In my work in the Industry Committee of the European Parliament, I further had the opportunity of looking at the European Infrastructure Development Funds. They're meant to add European added value to our lives. which means essentially that you pump money into some infrastructure somewhere and then somebody else benefits it from it in another member state, hopefully. In many cases, this means giving lots of money to a private entity, because the funds given to an infrastructural project in a member state, and especially some of the more big member states or with more inhabitants, the funds are so large that they need to be given more or less to the incumbent being the dominating actor in a specific industry. The money is normally donated to this incumbent in such a way that they have an exclusive contract to operate on the infrastructure that they built with the public money for a large number of years afterwards. But Spanish daily journal El País, which last year ran an investigation on how large companies, especially in the IT sector, are investing in the development of markets in the European Union, found that the 4 biggest IT enterprises in the European Union, who are often getting sponsored, actually by public money also, to build infrastructure or develop the services of tomorrow, they don't pay any taxes in the European Union, because they are able to put postbox companies in one or a few member states to which they channel all of the profits that they're making in the other member states. And the European Parliament, being a public-minded institution which keeps in touch with many groups from the non-profit sector, from the industry sector, and with citizens, have tried to amend this problem many times, but found resistance with particularly the Council of Ministers. What this shows is basically that our public money now goes into companies that are paying taxes only elsewhere, and that whenever we try to make a change, we're getting stuck on the member states. Because the primary competitors on the European market actually are the member states. It's not the companies. It's the member states that are competing with their tax policies and with their national regulatory authorities. And it's almost impossible to do anything about this because politicians are afraid of over-regulating the industry, and it causes them to badly regulate the public institutions. One of my hopes for the future European Pirate Party, or the future movement and development of information policy in Europe, is that we can maybe step away from this development, that we can go closer to having companies compete on the European market rather than our member states and public institutions, and that we're able to integrate also socially, which we would be able to do if the public institutions weren't keeping us from doing so. It's food, right? It's food time. I want to eat.
Yeah, thank you very much.